Here's somebody who works at television that's very prepared to shout from the rooftops, so thank you for giving us the opportunity. In 1969, when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, the world stopped and gathered around TV sets to watch the events unfold on air. 43 years later, in August of this year, when Katie Taylor won her gold medal in the XL Arena in London, while not the world, certainly the population of Ireland stopped and gathered around their TV screens to see events unfold. To paraphrase Mark Twain, and to quote Kieran Cunningham, I'm prepared to shout from the rooftops to tell you that rumours of the demise of TV have been greatly exaggerated. Right now, there are 2.8 million TV sets in Ireland. Almost 1 million of those are HD ready, and bizarrely, almost 80,000 people have 3D TV sets, and obviously the accompanying sets of glasses. To reiterate what Kieran said, people are buying television sets, and despite the recession, and despite the fact that television is still a purchase that one has to think about, over 370,000 TV sets were purchased in Ireland in the last 12 months. Kieran's figures are slightly bigger than mine, but I'm not going to argue. And when I tell you that people are buying TV sets, and TV sets are getting more and more sophisticated and maybe not quite taking over the conversation in the living room as Kieran would like it to do, but is because people are watching more television. In 2006, the average Irish adult watched 3 hours and 10 minutes of live television. Despite reports of the demise of television, the figure this year, which is slightly different to Kieran's, but slightly less, is 3 hours, 15 minutes. So we won't fight about it, but the reality is that people are watching, in our view, 195 minutes of live television a day. That does not include catch-up television, which is on top. And for the cynics in the audience who say, well, that's just adults, it's the young people that have all stopped watching television. The comparative figure for 15 to 34-year-olds in Ireland in 2006 was 2 hours and 27 minutes. And this year to date, it's a minute more at 2 hours, 28 minutes. So where are all the 15 to 34-year-olds gone? They're not. And just because it's easy to kind of quote 3 hours, 15 minutes, what does that mean? Again, going back to this stadium on Friday night, for those of you who are unfortunate enough to be here, 3 hours and 15 minutes is exactly the length of the match where we were drubbed 6-1 by Germany twice. So you would have had to, presuming you stayed to the end and didn't leave, you would have had to see through that match twice. 3 hours and 15 minutes is a long time. And Irish people, Irish adults, you spend that amount of time every day, every week of the year watching television. What that means for us in the commercial side of the business is that it delivers enormous audiences. And this is probably the biggest figure that I've ever presented, but this is 41.7 billion. It is the number of 30-second commercial impacts that were delivered by Irish television last year. 41.7 million impacts. And I'm sorry, Colin Mullen, for the cheap dig, but it would take quite a lot of clicks to get anywhere near a fraction of that number. 41 billion shouted from the rooftops. And not only that, that's great, it's great for us in the business, and it's very gratifying that people are buying more televisions, they're watching as much television and all of that. But this, for us, all of us in the room, is a business. And as Kieran said, there is lots of evidence to say, continuing evidence to say, that television continues to deliver return on investment. And television continues to be the medium that for advertisers best delivers return on your advertising euros. In 2008, we in RTÉ did our first piece of econometric research. Still have a problem understanding econometrics, but I try. And what we did was we replicated a study that had been done by the great body ThinkBox in the UK. And ThinkBox, as you all probably know, is the wonderful body that is the marketing arm of UK TV. And they had conducted an econometric study with a gentleman called Andrew Sharp, ex-PwC. And what we asked him to do was to replicate that study for us here in Ireland, and he did. And just in summary, what he said in the Irish version also was that TV converted the ad investments into WTP, which is willingness to purchase premia, which he says is the economic point of branding. People are prepared to want to buy your product. That television converted the euro ad investment more effectively than any other media. He also paraphrased Mark Twain and said that the rumours of the TV ad demise may have been exaggerated. That was in 2008. This year, 2012, we did a further study in RTÉ, and I will spare you at this hour of the evening and just give you a web address and point you to my research manager, Paul Lockery, who's more than happy to take you through any of this. But what this research showed, where we compared TV ad investment versus other media, and it was all TV, because as Pat Kelly and I agreed, this is a night about all TV. And it proved categorically that TV punches above its weight in terms of contribution to sales. And in this instance, we compared television to other media and to promotions, because I think all of us in above-the-line media would agree that one of our biggest competitors is actually arguably Tesco, because the budgets that we don't get, they get. So we also looked at promotions rather than just looking at other media. Another piece of research that has just been done by Tam Ireland in conjunction with Nielsen, and I know Jill McGrath from Tam Ireland is also happy to show this to anybody who wants to see it, is that it works, television advertising works, but also consumers rate it. And this basically is consumers admitting, and looking at the chart, the bigger the circle, the better it is, frankly, so television is at the top. Irish consumers admit that they are highly influenced by television and by press when making purchase decisions, and they say that the medium most likely to influence them when they're purchasing an FMCG product. 49% of people say television, 47% of people say television for home electronics. All you need to do is look at the big, nice orange circles. They're all television, being the most persuasive medium from the consumer's perspective. And as importantly, in my view, the consumers say that they trust TV advertising. And here you'll see, and there's only one number you really need to look at here, is that if you look at the European average of people trusting television commercials, the figure across Europe is 29, the figure in Ireland is 44. So I think that for any of us involved in selling commercials within the TV environment in Ireland, we have the trust of the consumers and they believe what our ads say. I think that's a good place to be. So yes, before you redefine anything, you have to define it, and as I say, we are in a really good place. I think, and I think Richard said the same two things, I think that in terms of redefinition and how things are changing, there are two key factors. One is the funding model, and the second is technology and how people watch, and those two are obviously interlinked. I would genuinely say that in both cases I think that the challenges lead to opportunities and that there are far more opportunities than challenges. Talking firstly about the funding model, and I'm very conscious that I'm here talking on behalf of RTÉ, who is a public service broadcaster with a dual funding model, and that we are in receipt of public funding. And it's for that reason that I have my glasses, because I'm going to quote the Director General. And what he said very recently, because it is a public debate, and what Noel said recently was that every body that receives public funding has to restate its value, reclaim its legitimacy, and remake its case. RTÉ is actively engaged in this dialogue and understands that there could be recalibration of RTÉ's commercial versus public income. The point here is just to say, as representing RTÉ, I think it's important to say that we don't take commercial funding or public funding as a divine right. We are actively engaged in the debate on public funding, and we at the commercial side of the house are doing everything we can to maintain our commercial revenue, but neither are a divine right. So that's the public funding side. In terms of the economy, and that hits us all the same way, whether we have dual funding or not, I would like to say that I think rather than necessity being the mother of invention, that necessity has actually been the mother of innovation when it comes to TV. And the last couple of tough years that we've all had have seen us do things that maybe, certainly for speaking on behalf of RTÉ, you never thought we'd do. Did you ever think that you would see a branded shop that appears a couple of times a week in Fair City and is a key part of the Carrickstown lot? I wouldn't have said we would have seen that 5 years ago. TV3 is very actively engaged in their 360 and integrating brands across across editorial and commercial. I'm really glad that Ciarán mentioned Bank of Ireland and Dragon's Den, and I'm also particularly glad that I see Judy Barry is here. Bank of Ireland are not just the sponsors of Dragon's Den, they are the advertising funders of Dragon's Den, and I think it's a really good, and we have just, I'm delighted to say, signed the contract for series number 5. And that is a really good example of using content off air, and I'm really glad you mentioned that, Ciarán, because what you see on air and the stings that you see on air is only a microcosm of what Bank of Ireland have done with the Dragon's Den brand, the dragons themselves and everything else off air. They've got, and they have used the content in lots of different places. So it's a great example. For those looking at it on air, it looks like a sponsorship, but anybody who knows it knows there's multi-layers to it, and they have been really clever about how they have used the content. So finally then, how people watch and how technology has changed the way people watch. With all the talk of the second screen, I think, again, as somebody who's proud to shout from the rooftops about representing television, first and foremost, let's remember that television remains the first screen. 91% of people watch television live as it's being broadcast. And one of the, I will credit my colleague Simon Witt with this, when he said, I don't know why everybody goes on about people watching television and doing something else. My dad read the newspaper all the time as he watched television. And then you think about your own family, and yes, they always did. So did mine. So we kind of say internally, well, newspaper was the original second screen. So the idea of media meshing and the idea of people doing something else while they watch television is not necessarily new. The opportunity, however, and Ciarán has alluded to this, and again, our figures are slightly different, but that 58% of people, you're slightly higher, Ciarán, say that they are okay, they are sometimes online while watching TV. But the most important thing is that 19% of them state that the online activity is likely to be related to the TV programme, which therefore makes it more engaging from our perspective, or potentially the ads they are watching. The difference, we would say now, between the newspaper and the second screen, as it now is that it enables the path to purchase, because you can in many cases, you can go directly from the first screen to the second screen to the path to purchase and buy as you view. The challenge, I would say, and this is a geek, and Paul Lockery told me he was a geek, so if Paul Lockery told me he was a geek, he's my research manager, so it's a geek. I think the challenge for the industry, and I completely agree with you about connectivity, but the challenge, I think, for us as an industry is how we measure this journey. We have an incredibly good research on television. We know it's minute by minute, and we know exactly to the 18 audiences or the 30-something audiences who's watching. The issue, I think, at the moment is that we can't follow the journey from one screen to another and back again. And I think that the challenge for us as an industry is to have single source research. Because if we want to sell collectively to clients how the journey can work for them and their products and services, we have to be able to measure that journey. And I think it's a call out for the whole industry. There's no point in having disjointed pieces of research, some of which are occasional and ad hoc, if you really want to sell integration to clients into the future. And I think the challenge to us all is to find a joined up way of researching exactly what is happening in the new environment. So I would say to your connectivity point, Ciarán, what about connectivity of research? And then I think we have something really good to sell. So in summary, we're from television and we're proud of it. Television remains central to the life of the Irish consumer. We can continue to prove, and we will continue to invest to prove to you that it gives you a better return on investment for your advertising euros than anything else. We would say categorically that redefinition is all about opportunities and that we're well up for it. Thank you.